My name is Penelope. I'm 23 years old and I just graduated from Harvard University. Today should have been one of the proudest moments of my life, but instead, I stand here alone while my parents cheer for my sister at her beauty pageant 3 states away. That choice wasn't just about missing a ceremony. It was the final thread in a tapestry of disappointment that led me to make the hardest decision of my life. Let me know where you're watching from. And if my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe as I share how I finally chose myself. Growing up in the Johnson household meant constantly fighting for attention. As the middle child between my successful older brother James and my beauty queen younger sister Stephanie, I often felt invisible. My father Harold was a successful business executive who spent more time at the office than at home. When he was around, his attention was primarily focused on James grooming him to follow in his footsteps in the corporate world. Their conversations revolved around stocks business strategies and networking opportunities. I would hover nearby hoping to be included, but was usually met with, "This is grown-up talk, Penelope. Why don't you go help your mother?" My mother, Diana, was a former beauty contestant herself. She had won several local pageants in her youth before settling down to marry my father. The trophies and crowns still decorated our living room, constant reminders of her glory days. When Stephanie was born with her blonde curls and bright blue eyes, Mom immediately saw herself in my sister. By the time Stephanie turned 5, she was already participating in child beauty pageants with Mom as her dedicated coach and biggest fan. I was 7 when Stephanie won her first pageant. The entire house erupted in celebration. Dad came home early from work bringing an enormous teddy bear for Stephanie. Mom made a special dinner and even baked a cake with Our Little Queen written in pink frosting. James, 12 at the time, was allowed to stay up late to watch movies with them. I sat at the dinner table picking at my slice of cake, wondering what I needed to do to make them this happy. "Mom, do you think I could try a pageant too?" I asked, hesitantly. My mother looked at me with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. "Oh, honey," she said, patting my mousy brown hair. "Pageants aren't really for everyone. You have other qualities." I wasn't sure what those other qualities were supposed to be. I wasn't particularly athletic or artistic. I wasn't stunningly beautiful like Stephanie or charismatic like James. The only thing I seemed to be good at was school. My report cards were always filled with A's, but they were usually met with a quick "good job" before being placed on the refrigerator, only to be covered up by Stephanie's latest pageant flyer or James's baseball tournament schedule. By the time I reached middle school, the roles in our family were firmly established. James was the future business tycoon, Stephanie was the beauty queen, and I was the smart one, I guess. But being the smart one didn't seem to come with the same accolades or attention. I remember my 8th grade science fair project winning first place at the state level. I had spent months working on it, staying late after school to use the lab equipment, and spending weekends researching at the library. When the day came to present it to the judges, I looked out into the audience, hoping to see my parents' proud faces. Instead, I saw empty chairs. They had taken Stephanie to a regional pageant in a neighboring state. When I got home that evening, clutching my blue ribbon and certificate, Mom was helping Stephanie unpack her new dresses for an upcoming competition. "How did your science thing go?" she asked without looking up. "I won first place," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "That's nice, dear. Could you help your sister organize her makeup kit for tomorrow? We need to be up early to get her hair done before the preliminary round." That night I cried myself to sleep, the blue ribbon crumpled in my fist. It was the first time I realized that no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough to compete with Stephanie's pageants or James's business aspirations. James graduated high school with honors and went straight to Wharton Business School just as Dad had always planned. The day he left for college, Dad took him shopping for suits and briefcases, talking excitedly about internship opportunities and networking events. Mom spent the day cooking James's favorite meals and packing care packages for him to take to his dorm. I sat at the dining table working on my homework, wondering if they would do the same for me when it was my turn to go to college. By this point, I had set my sights on Harvard. Not because my parents had encouraged me, but because I had decided that if I couldn't earn their attention with normal achievements, maybe something extraordinary would finally make them see me. Meanwhile, Stephanie was blossoming into a teenage beauty queen. At 15, she had already accumulated more trophies and crowns than Mom had in her entire pageant career. Our house became a shrine to Stephanie's achievements, with photos of her in various gowns and tiaras covering the walls. My academic awards and certificates were confined to a small bulletin board in my bedroom, out of sight from visitors. As high school progressed, I threw myself into academics and extracurricular activities. I joined the debate team, the math club, the science Olympiad, and still managed to maintain a perfect GPA. I wasn't just doing it for my parents anymore. I was doing it for myself, to prove that I mattered, that my achievements were worth something, even if no one else seemed to think so. During my junior year, my English teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, became something of a mentor to me. She was the first adult who seemed to truly see me and value my intelligence and hard work. "You have a remarkable mind, Penelope," she told me one day after class. "Have you thought about where you want to go to college?" "Harvard," I replied without hesitation. "But I don't know if I'll get in." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "With your grades and talents, I think you have an excellent chance. But more importantly is that what you want or what you think will finally earn your parents' approval." Her question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized how transparent my motivations were. "Both, I guess," I admitted. "Just remember, Penelope, you can't build your life around earning someone else's approval. Sooner or later, you have to decide what matters to you." It was a lesson that would take me years to fully learn. Harvard had been my dream since I was 12 years old. I still remember the day I decided it was where I wanted to go. My 8th grade class took a field trip to a college fair, and I was immediately drawn to the Harvard booth. The representative talked about the university's rich history, the cutting-edge research, and the brilliant minds that had walked its hallowed halls. I picked up every brochure they had, carrying them home like treasure. That night, I spread the brochures across my bed and imagined myself there walking across Harvard Yard, studying in Widener Library, making discoveries that would change the world. For the first time, I had a vision for my future that had nothing to do with competing for my parents' attention. This was something I wanted for myself. Throughout high school, every decision I made was with Harvard in mind. I took all the AP classes available, participated in academic competitions, and volunteered at the local hospital to strengthen my application. I spent countless nights studying until my eyes burned, knowing that perfect grades alone wouldn't be enough. Harvard accepted less than 5% of applicants. I needed to be exceptional. My guidance counselor, Mr. Patterson, was incredibly supportive of my Harvard ambitions. He helped me navigate the application process, reviewed my essays, and wrote a glowing recommendation letter. When I worried about the cost, he helped me research scholarships and financial aid options. "You're exactly the kind of student Harvard is looking for, Penelope," he assured me. "Don't sell yourself short." The day the application was due, my hands shook as I clicked the submit button. It felt like I was sending a piece of my soul out into the world, hoping it would be deemed worthy. The waiting period was excruciating. Every day I checked the mail before anyone else could, my heart racing whenever I saw an envelope addressed to me. When the acceptance letter finally came, I couldn't believe it. I read it 5 times, running my fingers over the Harvard seal, making sure it was real. I had done it. I had been accepted to Harvard University with a partial scholarship. All my hard work had paid off. That evening, I waited until everyone was home for dinner to share the news. I placed the acceptance letter next to my plate butterflies in my stomach as I anticipated their reactions. "I have something to tell you all," I said when there was a lull in the conversation. "I got into Harvard with a scholarship." There was a moment of silence as they processed the information. Dad looked up from his phone, seeming mildly surprised. "Harvard. That's in Massachusetts, right? Pretty expensive school." "Yes, but I got a scholarship that covers most of the tuition," I explained, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. I had hoped for more enthusiasm. Mom nodded a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes on her face. "That's nice, dear. Very impressive." "Wow, Harvard, that's like super nerdy," Stephanie said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "I'm thinking of just going to community college for a year and then trying out for Miss America. College is such a waste of time when you could be building your platform and getting sponsors." James, who was home for the weekend from Wharton, gave me a genuine smile. Good job, Penn. Harvard's a great school. Not as good as Wharton for business, of course, but still impressive. And that was it. No celebration, no proud hugs, no special dinner. The conversation quickly shifted to Stephanie's upcoming regional pageant and what dress she should wear for the evening gown portion. I excused myself early from dinner, taking my Harvard acceptance letter with me. In my room, I called Mrs. Rodriguez to share my news. Her excitement and pride meant more to me than my family's lukewarm response. I always knew you could do it, Penelope. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Harvard is gaining a brilliant young woman. The months leading up to my departure for college were a flurry of preparations, most of which I handled on my own. Mom was busy with Stephanie's summer pageant circuit, and Dad was rarely home. I researched dorm essentials, applied for additional scholarships, and attended the new student orientation alone, while my parents took Stephanie to a beauty boot camp in California. The day I left for Harvard, I had to take an Uber to the airport because no one was available to drive me. Mom left a note on the kitchen counter wishing me luck and reminding me to call once I was settled. Dad texted that he had deposited some money in my account for textbooks. James called from New York, where he had just started his first job at a prestigious firm, apologizing for not being able to see me off. I remember standing in the airport, my entire life packed into 2 suitcases and a backpack, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. This was it. I was finally starting my Harvard journey, even if I was starting it alone. The first few weeks at Harvard were overwhelming. The campus was bigger and more intimidating than I had imagined, and the coursework was challenging even for someone who had always excelled academically. But for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence and curiosity the same way I did. I met Alexis during freshman orientation. She was a brilliant, outspoken girl from Seattle who was studying computer science. We bonded over our shared love of sci-fi novels and our experience of being underestimated because we didn't fit certain stereotypes. Alexis introduced me to Taylor, her roommate, a pre-med student from Chicago, with a wicked sense of humor and a kind heart. The three of us became inseparable. We studied together in the library, explored Boston on weekends, and supported each other through the ups and downs of college life. They were the first real friends I had ever had, people who liked me for who I was, not how I compared to my siblings. My professors at Harvard challenged and inspired me in ways I had never experienced before. Dr. Montgomery, my molecular biology professor, became a particular mentor. He noticed my passion for research and invited me to join his lab as an undergraduate assistant, an opportunity usually reserved for upperclassmen. "You have a natural instinct for research, Penelope," he told me after I had successfully completed my first independent experiment. "Have you considered pursuing a PhD after graduation?" It was the first time someone had asked about my plans for the future with genuine interest, not just as a formality. It was also the first time I realized I could have a future in academia, a place where my intelligence and dedication would be valued and rewarded. Throughout my 4 years at Harvard, I thrived academically and personally. I published 2 research papers with Dr. Montgomery presented at national conferences and maintained a near-perfect GPA. I discovered a passion for molecular genetics and decided to pursue a PhD in the field after graduation. My relationship with my family remained distant during this time. I went home for holidays, but often felt like a visitor in my own house. Conversations revolved around Stephanie's pageant successes or James's rapid rise through the corporate ranks. When asked about Harvard, I learned to keep my answers brief and modest, knowing that detailed accounts of my research or academic achievements would be met with polite but disinterested nods. In my junior year, when I won a prestigious undergraduate research award, I didn't even tell my parents. Instead, I celebrated with Alexis Taylor and Dr. Montgomery people who understood what the achievement meant and were genuinely happy for me. As graduation approached, I was selected as one of the top students in my department, which meant I would be recognized during the ceremony and receive my diploma directly from the dean. It was an honor that recognized not just my academic achievements, but also my contributions to the university community through research and mentoring younger students. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this achievement would finally be enough to make my parents proud. 3 months before graduation, I sent formal invitations to my family. The thick, cream-colored cards with Harvard's crimson emblem felt important in my hands as I slipped them into envelopes. I included a personal note in each one explaining that I would be receiving special recognition at the ceremony and how much it would mean to have them there. I called Mom a week later to follow up, my heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. "Did you get the graduation invitation I sent?" I asked after we had exchanged pleasantries. "Oh yes, it's on the fridge," she replied. "It looks very fancy. Harvard really does everything with such class." I felt a small surge of hope. "So you and Dad will come. I'm being recognized as one of the top graduates in my department. I'll be receiving my diploma directly from the dean." There was a slight pause. "Well, we'll have to check our calendars. Your father is very busy with work and Stephanie has several pageants coming up. But we'll try our best, of course." I gripped my phone tighter, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "The ceremony is on May 27th. I know it's still 3 months away, but it would really help if you could let me know soon so I can reserve seats and arrange accommodations for you." May 27th. Let me check. I heard the sound of pages flipping, presumably a calendar. Oh, that's right around the time of Stephanie's state pageant. If she makes it to finals, those would be on the same weekend. My heart sank. Once again, I was being weighed against Stephanie's pageants, and once again, I was likely to come up short. "Mom, this is my Harvard graduation," I said, unable to keep the pleading note from my voice. "I've worked so hard for this. Can't you and Dad make it work? Maybe one of you could come to my graduation and one could go to Stephanie's pageant?" "Don't be selfish, Penelope," she replied, her tone sharpening. "Stephanie's pageants are very important for her future. This one could lead to a national competition, which could mean sponsorships and modeling contracts. Your graduation is important too, of course, but you'll have many accomplishments in your life. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your sister." I wanted to scream that my Harvard graduation was also a once-in-a-lifetime event, that I had worked incredibly hard for 4 years, while Stephanie had been competing in pageants since she was 5. Instead, I took a deep breath. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Just please try. It would mean a lot to me." "We'll do our best, dear. I'll talk to your father about it." After that call, I tried not to get my hopes up, but a small part of me still believed they would come through this time. This was Harvard, after all. How could they miss their daughter graduating from one of the most prestigious universities in the world? Over the next few months, I called home regularly, gently reminding them about graduation. Each time, I was met with non-committal responses. "We're still figuring out the logistics," or "We haven't forgotten, we're just juggling a lot right now." Despite their lack of enthusiasm, I went ahead and booked a hotel room for them near campus, using money from my research stipend. I purchased plane tickets that could be refunded if necessary. I wanted to eliminate any practical obstacles that might prevent them from attending. In the meantime, I threw myself into preparations for graduation. I ordered my cap and gown attended fittings and prepared for final exams. As one of the students being recognized for academic excellence, I was asked to give a short speech during the department ceremony. I spent weeks crafting it, imagining my parents in the audience, finally seeing the value in the path I had chosen. Alexis and Taylor helped me shop for the perfect outfit to wear under my graduation gown. We settled on a simple but elegant dress in Harvard crimson, paired with comfortable but stylish shoes for walking across the stage. "Your parents are going to be so proud when they see you," Alexis said as I tried on the dress. I smiled weakly, not wanting to admit that I still wasn't sure if they would even be there. 2 weeks before graduation, I called home again, hoping for confirmation. "Mom, I need to finalize the seating arrangements for graduation. Are you and Dad coming? I've already booked your hotel and flights." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, Penelope, I've been meaning to call you about that. Stephanie made it to the finals of the state pageant, and they're scheduled for the same day as your graduation." My stomach dropped. And we've decided we need to be there for her. She's so nervous about the competition, and having us there will really boost her confidence. You understand, don't you? You've always been so independent, so self-sufficient. Stephanie needs us more right now. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar pain wash over me. What about James? Is he coming to my graduation? James has a big presentation for potential investors that weekend. He can't get away either, but he sends his love and congratulations. I sat in silence, absorbing the fact that not a single member of my family would be present on one of the most important days of my life. Penelope, are you still there? Yes. I managed my voice barely above a whisper. I'm still here. We're very proud of you, you know that, right? Harvard is a big deal, and you've done so well there. We'll celebrate when you come home after graduation. But her words rang hollow. If they were truly proud, wouldn't they make the effort to be there? Wouldn't they prioritize my graduation over Stephanie's pageant just this once? I have to go, Mom, I said, not trusting myself to continue the conversation without breaking down. All right, dear, we'll talk soon. Good luck with your finals. I hung up and stared at my phone, feeling a strange numbness spread through me. After years of disappointment, I should have been used to this by now. But somehow this felt different. This felt final. That night I confided in my roommate about my family's decision. She was outraged on my behalf. That's incredibly unfair, she said, sitting beside me on my bed. You've worked so hard for this. How can they miss it for a beauty pageant? I shrugged, trying to appear more nonchalant than I felt. That's just how it's always been. Stephanie's pageants always come first. Well, forget them. We're your family now. Me, Alexis Taylor, everyone here who loves and supports you, will cheer so loudly when you cross that stage that you won't even notice your parents aren't there. I smiled gratefully, but inside I knew that no amount of cheering could fill the void left by my family's absence. 1 week before graduation, I received the call that would be the final breaking point. I was in the library finishing up a paper when my phone vibrated with my mother's number. Hello? I answered, stepping outside to take the call. Penelope, I wanted to let you know the final details about the weekend. Mom said, her voice unusually high and cheerful. What details? I asked, though I already knew what was coming. Well, as I mentioned before, Stephanie's pageant is the same weekend as your graduation. Your father and I have decided that we need to be there for her. She's so nervous, and it's such a big opportunity. If she wins, it could open doors to the national circuit. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Even though I had expected this hearing, it confirmed, still felt like a punch to the gut. I see, I said, my voice flat. So neither of you will be coming to my Harvard graduation. Now, Penelope, don't make it sound like that. You know we'd be there if we could. It's just terrible timing. Is it, though? You've known about my graduation date for months. You could have asked Stephanie to skip this one pageant, or at least one of you could have come to my graduation. Stephanie can't skip this pageant. It's the state finals. She's worked so hard to get here. And I haven't worked hard, I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. I've spent 4 years at one of the most demanding universities in the country. I'm graduating with honors. I'm being recognized as one of the top students. But none of that matters because Stephanie has a pageant. That's not fair, Penelope. You know we're proud of you. But Stephanie needs us there. You're strong and independent. You've always done well on your own. Because I've had to, I said quietly. Because you and Dad have always been too busy with James and Stephanie to notice me. There was a silence on the other end of the line. That's not true, Mom finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. We've always supported you. No, you haven't. You've tolerated my achievements. You've acknowledged them with a pat on the head before quickly moving on to Stephanie's latest crown or James's newest promotion. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to get where I am? Do you even care? Of course we care. How can you say that we're your parents? Then act like it, I said, surprising myself with the bitterness in my voice. For once in my life, put me first. Be there for me on one of the most important days of my life. Penelope, you're being dramatic. It's just a graduation ceremony. There will be other achievements in your life. It's Harvard, Mom. Harvard. Do you know how many people dream of walking across that stage, and I worked for it? I earned it, without any help or encouragement from you or Dad. The least you could do is show up. I'm sorry you feel that way, but our decision is made. We'll be at Stephanie's pageant. We can celebrate your graduation when you come home. Something inside me broke at those words. Years of disappointment, of feeling invisible, of never being enough crystallized into a cold, hard certainty. They would never change. They would never see me. Don't bother, I said quietly. I won't be coming home. What? Of course you will. Where else would you go? Anywhere but there. I'm done, Mom. Done trying to earn your attention, your approval, your love. I'm done competing with Stephanie and James for scraps of your affection. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Penelope, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this when you're calmer. There's nothing to talk about. Goodbye, Mom. Enjoy the pageant. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. I had never spoken to my mother like that before. I had always been the good daughter, the one who didn't cause trouble, who understood when family plans changed at the last minute to accommodate Stephanie's pageants or James's business events. But something had shifted inside me. The pain of their rejection had hardened into resolve. If they couldn't be bothered to show up for one of the most significant days of my life, why should I continue to seek their approval? That evening, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me hoped he was calling to say they had reconsidered, that they would be at my graduation after all. Penelope, your mother told me about your conversation, he said, his voice stern. I understand you're disappointed, but that's no reason to upset your mother and make threats about not coming home. It wasn't a threat, Dad. It was a decision. A foolish one. Where do you think you're going to go? You need to come home after graduation until you figure out your next steps. I've already figured out my next steps. I've been offered a research position at Boston University. I start 2 weeks after graduation. I've already found an apartment with Alexis. There was a pause, and I realized he hadn't even known about my job offer. I had shared the news weeks ago during a brief phone call with my mother, but apparently it hadn't been important enough to mention to him. Well, that's good. But that doesn't change the fact that you were disrespectful to your mother. You need to apologize. For what? For expecting my parents to attend my Harvard graduation. For feeling hurt when they chose a beauty pageant over one of the most important days of my life. Now, Penelope, that's not fair. Stephanie's pageant is very important. This could be a big break for her career. And my graduation isn't important for my career, Dad. Do you even hear yourself? You have 3 children, but you only seem to care about the achievements of 2 of them. That's not true. We're very proud of you. No, you're not. If you were proud of me, you'd be at my graduation. It's that simple. Life isn't that simple, Penelope. We have to make difficult choices sometimes. And you've made yours. Repeatedly. Every time there's a conflict between what I need and what Stephanie or James needs, I come last. Every single time. Well, I'm done being last. I'm done being the afterthought. I'm done with all of it. You don't mean that. You're just upset. I've been upset for years, Dad. The difference is that now I'm finally doing something about it. And what exactly are you doing? I'm prioritizing myself since none of you will. I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around seeking your approval or competing for your attention. I'm finally accepting that I will never be as important to you as Stephanie or James, and I'm making peace with that. Penelope, you're being ridiculous. Of course you're important to us. We're your family. Family is more than blood, Dad. Family is showing up. Family is being there for the important moments. Family is making someone feel valued and loved. And by those measures, you and Mom have failed spectacularly. I won't be spoken to like this, he said, his voice hardening. When you've calmed down and are ready to apologize, you can call us back. Don't hold your breath, I said, and hung up. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I received a text from Stephanie. Way to make everything about you as usual. Thanks for trying to ruin my pageant weekend with your dramatics. Some of us are trying to build careers here. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I scrolled through social media where Stephanie had posted several photos of her pageant preparations. Both my parents had commented with hearts and supportive messages. There wasn't a single mention of my upcoming graduation. The next morning, I woke up to multiple missed calls from my mother and several text messages asking me to call her back. I ignored them all, I was done explaining myself, done trying to make them understand how much they had hurt me. It was time to focus on myself and the people who had actually been there for me during my college years. The day before graduation, I checked social media one last time. Stephanie had posted a photo of herself in a sparkling evening gown, with my parents beaming beside her. The caption read, "Final preparations for tomorrow's state finals. So blessed to have my amazing parents here to support me. Had pageant life, hash blessed, hash family support." I closed the app and blocked all of their accounts. Tomorrow was my graduation, and I wasn't going to let their absence diminish the pride I felt in my accomplishments. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear, a perfect New England spring day. As I put on the crimson dress Alexis had helped me choose, I tried to focus on the achievement rather than the empty seats that would be in the audience. My roommate knocked on my door, already dressed in her cap and gown. "Ready for the big day?" she asked with a smile. I nodded, forcing a smile in return. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Alexis and Taylor are waiting downstairs. They've got signs and everything." True to their word, my friends had gone all out to make the day special. Alexis held a large sign that read, "Harvard's finest, Dr. Penelope Johnson, soon to be," while Taylor had brought a bouquet of crimson and white flowers. "You guys didn't have to do all this," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Of course we did," Alexis said, giving me a fierce hug. "We're your family, remember?" Taylor's parents had come for graduation as well, and they insisted I join them for all the family events. "We've heard so much about you from Taylor," Mrs. Collins said warmly. "We'd be honored if you'd join us for dinner after the ceremony." As we made our way to the graduation venue, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "Good luck at graduation. Wish we could be there, but I'm so nervous about finals tonight. Mom and Dad say congrats too." Attached was a selfie of her in a sparkly tiara, my parents visible in the background, helping her with last-minute preparations. They looked happy, excited, completely unbothered by the fact that they were missing my Harvard graduation. I showed the text to Alexis, who scowled. "The audacity," she muttered. "A text they couldn't even call." I shrugged, trying to appear more nonchalant than I felt. "It's fine. I expected this." "It's not fine, Penelope. It's crappy parenting is what it is." She was right, of course, but acknowledging that would mean breaking down in tears right before the ceremony, and I refused to let my family's absence ruin this day for me. The graduation ceremony was a blur of emotions. The sea of crimson gowns, the ancient traditions, the Latin phrases, the distinguished speakers. I remember the weight of my cap, the way my tassel moved when I turned my head, the feel of the diploma in my hand. When my name was called and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, there was a small but enthusiastic cheer from the section where Alexis Taylor and the Collins family sat. I smiled and waved in their direction, grateful for their support, but acutely aware of who was missing. As I returned to my seat, my phone vibrated in the pocket of my dress. I discreetly checked it to find a message from my mother. "Stephanie won. She's going to the national pageant. Your father and I are so proud. Hope your graduation went well. Love you." Attached was a photo of Stephanie in a glittering crown and sash, my parents on either side of her, their faces glowing with pride. The message was clear. Stephanie's pageant victory was more important, more worthy of celebration, than my Harvard graduation. Something shifted inside me as I stared at that photo. A cold clarity washed over me. I had spent years trying to earn my parents' approval, their attention, their pride. I had graduated from Harvard, one of the most prestigious universities in the world, with honors. I had secured a coveted research position. I had achieved everything I had set out to do. And still, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. In that moment, sitting amid the sea of crimson gowns with my Harvard diploma in hand, I made a decision. This would be the last time I allowed my family's indifference to diminish my achievements. This would be the last time I measured my worth by their acknowledgement. After the ceremony, I posed for photos with Alexis Taylor and the Collins family. We laughed and celebrated, and for a few hours, I almost forgot about the family that had chosen not to be there. But that evening, alone in my dorm room packing the last of my belongings, the reality hit me again. My social media was flooded with photos of Stephanie's pageant victory shared and reposted by my parents, with captions like, "Our beautiful queen," and "So proud of our talented daughter." There wasn't a single mention of my graduation. Not one post, not one photo, not one public acknowledgement that their other daughter had just graduated from Harvard University. I lay on my bed scrolling through these posts, watching as relatives and family friends commented with congratulations for Stephanie. No one asked about me. No one seemed to remember or care that I had also achieved something significant that day. My phone rang, and for a brief, hopeful moment, I thought it might be my parents calling to properly congratulate me. But it was James. "Hey, Pen," he said when I answered. "Congrats on graduating. Sorry I couldn't make it." "Thanks," I replied, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "How was your presentation?" "It went well. The investor seemed interested, but hey, did you hear about Steph? She won the state pageant. She's going to nationals. Mom and Dad are over the moon." Of course they were. "Yeah, I heard. They posted a bunch of photos. It looked like a big deal." "I'm sure it was." There was an awkward pause. "Look, Pen, I know you're probably upset that none of us made it to your graduation. It was just bad timing with Steph's pageant and my presentation." "It's always bad timing, James. Every time there's something important in my life, there's something more important happening with you or Stephanie." He sighed. "That's not fair. We all have our things. Stephanie has pageants. I have my business career. You have academics. We can't always be there for everything. Except you and Stephanie always have mom and dad there for your things. Always. Can you name one important event in my life that they prioritized over something for you or Stephanie?" "Just one." The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Pen, they love you. They're proud of you. Not enough to show up. Not enough to post about it. Not enough to even call me today instead of texting a photo of Stephanie's win. They're just caught up in the excitement. You know how they get with Steph's pageants. I know exactly how they get. And I'm done with it, James. I'm done being an afterthought in my own family." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm cutting ties. I'm starting a new life here in Boston, and I'm not looking back." "Don't be dramatic, Pen. They're our parents. Being a parent is more than biology, James. It's showing up. It's making your child feel valued and important. When was the last time they did that for me?" He had no answer. "I have to go," I said. "Goodbye, James." I hung up before he could respond. Then I turned off my phone, lay back on my bed, and for the first time since the morning call with my mother, I allowed myself to cry. I cried for the little girl who had never been enough for the teenager who had achieved excellence, only to be met with indifference for the young woman who had graduated from Harvard with no family there to witness it. But as the tears subsided, I felt something unexpected relief. A weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying seemed to lift from my shoulders. The constant need for approval, the never-ending competition for attention, the perpetual disappointment. I was finally letting it all go. Tomorrow, I would begin packing for my move to my new apartment. I would start my research position at Boston University. I would build a life filled with people who valued me for who I was, not how I compared to my siblings. I would finally be free. The day after graduation, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The path forward seemed suddenly startlingly obvious. I needed to cut ties with my family completely, at least for a while. No more half measures, no more trying to maintain a relationship while silently enduring the hurt and disappointment. It was time for a clean break. I started by changing my phone number. It felt symbolic somehow, severing the most immediate line of communication. I sent a brief email to my family with the new number, but made it clear I wouldn't be answering calls or texts from them for the foreseeable future. Next, I went through my social media accounts. I didn't want to delete them entirely, as they were my connection to friends from Harvard and my new colleagues at Boston University. Instead, I blocked my family members and adjusted my privacy settings to ensure they couldn't see my posts or contact me through these platforms. Alexis helped me find a therapist in Boston who specialized in family trauma and boundaries. Dr. Landry was a calm, compassionate woman who listened without judgment as I poured out years of feeling invisible, undervalued, and constantly compared to my siblings. What you're describing is a form of emotional neglect, she explained during our third session. It's particularly common in families with children who have very different talents or paths. Parents sometimes focus their attention on the children whose achievements they understand or value more often, without realizing they're neglecting their other children. But shouldn't parents value all their children's achievements equally? I asked, still struggling with the feeling that I was somehow overreacting. Ideally, yes. But many parents, especially those who have their own unfulfilled dreams or specific values, gravitate toward the children who reflect those dreams or values. In your case, it seems your father valued business success, which your brother embodied, and your mother valued beauty and traditional femininity, which your sister represented. And I didn't fit into either category. Exactly. Your academic achievements, while objectively impressive, didn't align with what they inherently valued or understood. So it's not that they didn't love me, I said slowly. They just didn't know how to value what I had to offer. That's a compassionate way to look at it. Dr. Landry nodded. But understanding the reasons doesn't invalidate your hurt or mean you should continue to accept being undervalued. Your decision to create distance is a healthy one given the circumstances. Those therapy sessions became a lifeline as I navigated my new family-free existence. There were moments of doubt, of course. Days when I would see a father and daughter laughing together in a cafe and feel a pang of loss. Nights when I would dream of reconciliation of my parents finally seeing and appreciating me for who I was. But there were also moments of profound liberation. I no longer felt the need to justify my academic interests or career choices to a disinterested audience. I didn't have to brace myself for the inevitable pivot in conversation to Stephanie's latest pageant or James's newest business venture. I could simply be Penelope defined by my own passions and pursuits, not by how I measured up to my siblings. My research position at Boston University was everything I had hoped for and more. Dr. Hernandez, the lead researcher, was brilliant and supportive, taking a genuine interest in my ideas and contributions. Unlike my family, who had never really understood or valued my academic achievements, my colleagues at the lab appreciated the unique perspective I brought to our work. Penelope, this approach to the gene sequencing is incredibly innovative, Dr. Hernandez said one day reviewing my latest findings. Have you considered publishing a paper on this methodology? I had, but I'd always hesitated, never quite believing my work was significant enough to share with the broader scientific community. Years of having my achievements minimized at home had left their mark. I'm not sure it's groundbreaking enough for publication, I admitted. Dr. Hernandez looked surprised. Not groundbreaking enough? Penelope, this could significantly improve the efficiency of genetic testing. Of course, it's worthy of publication. In fact, I'd be honored to co-author with you. It was the first of several papers we would publish together, establishing me as a promising young researcher in the field of molecular genetics. Each publication, each conference presentation, each word of recognition from my peers helped rebuild the sense of self-worth my family had so steadily eroded. As months passed, I began to build what Dr. Landry called my chosen family. Alexis and Taylor remained my closest friends, but my circle expanded to include colleagues from the lab neighbors from my apartment building and members of a book club I joined. These were people who saw me, truly saw me, and valued me for exactly who I was. Among them was Daniel, a doctoral student in biochemistry, who I met at a department mixer. He was thoughtful and kind with a quiet confidence that I found instantly attractive. Our first date was at a small science museum, where we spent hours discussing everything from the ethics of genetic engineering to our favorite sci-fi novels. My family thinks my interest in science is weird, he confessed over coffee. They're all artists, painters, musicians, designers. They don't understand why I'd rather look through a microscope than create something beautiful. At least they're interested enough to think it's weird, I replied with a small smile. My family barely acknowledges my work exists. As our relationship deepened, I gradually shared more about my family situation with Daniel. Unlike others who would insist, but they're your family, or I'm sure they love you in their own way, Daniel simply listened and validated my experience. What you've accomplished is remarkable, Penelope, he told me one evening as we walked along the Charles River. Not just the Harvard degree or the research position, but the strength it took to set boundaries with your family. That's incredibly brave. 6 months after graduation, I received my first contact from my family since cutting ties. It was a birthday card from my mother containing a check and a brief note. Happy birthday, Penelope. We miss you. Please call when you're ready to talk. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the card for a long time, tracing the familiar handwriting, feeling the old pull of obligation and hope. Maybe they had changed. Maybe my absence had made them realize what they had lost. But then I remembered Dr. Landry's words from our most recent session. Real change requires acknowledgement of past behavior and a commitment to do better. Without that, any reconciliation is likely to fall back into old patterns. There was no acknowledgement in my mother's note, no recognition of why I had needed to step away. Just the implicit expectation that I would eventually come back into the fold as if nothing had happened. I deposited the check, but I didn't call. A month later, James called my new number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Pen, finally," he said when I picked up. "I've been trying to reach you for months." "I'm sure you have," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "How are you, James?" "I'm good, but that's not why I'm calling. Mom and Dad are worried sick about you. You can't just cut off your family like this." "Actually, I can, and I have. Look, I get it. You were hurt that they missed your graduation. But isn't this a bit extreme? They're your parents." "Pen, this isn't about one missed graduation, James. This is about a lifetime of being overlooked, undervalued, and treated as less important than you or Stephanie. I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting myself from what they've never hurt you. Haven't they? Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up feeling invisible in your own family? To achieve something remarkable and have it dismissed as unimportant? To never, not once, be the priority?" There was a pause. "I didn't realize you felt that way." "Of course you didn't. You were the golden child the son Dad always wanted. You never had to wonder if your achievements would be acknowledged or celebrated." "That's not fair, Pen. I worked hard for everything I've achieved." "I'm not saying you didn't. I'm saying you had a support system, encouragement, validation. I had to fight for scraps of attention, and even then, it was always conditional, always less than what you or Stephanie received." Another pause, longer this time. "I never saw it that way. You never had to. So what now? You're just going to cut us all off forever?" "I don't know about forever. But for now, yes, I'm building a life where I'm valued and respected, where my work matters, where I matter. And we're not part of that life. Not until there are some significant changes in how I'm treated." "What kind of changes?" I took a deep breath. "Acknowledgement for starters. Recognition of the pattern of favoritism and neglect. Real genuine interest in my life and work, not just performative questions that pivot back to you or Stephanie. And boundaries. Clear, respected boundaries." That's a lot to ask. It's the bare minimum, actually. It's what any family should provide. "I'll talk to them," James said finally. "Try to make them understand." "You can try. But James, I'm not holding my breath." After that conversation, I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. Sad that my brother still couldn't fully see the dynamic that had shaped our family, but strong in my conviction that I was doing what I needed to do for my own well-being. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Stephanie. I almost deleted it without reading, but decided that would be avoiding rather than confronting the issue. "Dear Penelope," it began. "James told me about your conversation. I have to say I was shocked. I had no idea you felt overlooked or less valued in our family. From my perspective, you were always the smart one, the one who had it all figured out. You never seemed to need the attention or support that I did." I laughed aloud at that. Of course, I had needed support and attention. Everyone does. The difference was that I had learned early on not to expect it, and had found ways to achieve without it. I won't pretend to understand exactly how you feel, Stephanie continued, but I am sorry if my pageants and mom and dad's support of them made you feel less important. That was never my intention. I hope someday we can talk about this in person and maybe start to rebuild our relationship. Your sister, Stephanie. It was more introspective than I had expected from Stephanie, who had always seemed blissfully unaware of anything beyond her own immediate concerns. Perhaps there was hope for her yet. As for my parents, there was radio silence for several more months. No calls, no emails, no attempt to address the issues I had raised through James. It was as if they were waiting for me to get over it and return to the family fold without requiring any change on their part. That silence spoke volumes about their unwillingness or inability to see their role in our fractured relationship, and it reinforced my conviction that cutting ties had been the right decision. A year after my Harvard graduation, I received another email, this one from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, this one was different. It was longer, more reflective, and for the first time contained an acknowledgement of her failures as a parent. My dearest Penelope, she wrote, it has taken me a long, painful year to truly understand why you felt you needed to cut ties with us. James has been trying to explain it to me, and I've spent many sleepless nights reflecting on your childhood and adolescence. She went on to describe specific instances where she had prioritized Stephanie's pageants or James's business aspirations over my academic achievements. She recalled the science fair where I had won first place, but they hadn't attended the Harvard acceptance they had barely acknowledged, and of course the graduation they had missed. I can see now how these choices must have made you feel, she wrote, invisible, unimportant, secondary. And I am so deeply, profoundly sorry for that. It was never intentional, but that doesn't make it any less painful or damaging. She ended by asking if I would be willing to meet her for coffee the next time I visited my hometown. No pressure, no expectations, she assured me. Just a chance to talk mother to daughter. Your father isn't ready for this conversation yet, but I hope you'll give me the opportunity to start rebuilding what I've broken. I read the email several times, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't perfect. There were still hints of justification, still a sense that she didn't fully grasp the depth of the wound. But it was a start, an acknowledgement, a step toward the changes I had said I needed. After discussing it with Dr. Landry and Daniel, I decided to accept her invitation, not with the expectation of an immediate reconciliation, but as a first step toward a potentially healthier relationship. Remember, Dr. Landry cautioned, you're not obligated to forgive or forget. This meeting is about seeing if there's a basis for moving forward, not about erasing the past. And so a year and 2 months after cutting ties with my family, I sat across from my mother in a small cafe in my hometown, both of us nervous, both of us trying to navigate this new terrain of honesty and acknowledgement. You look well, Penelope, she said, studying me with eyes that seemed to see me more clearly than they ever had before. Happy. I am, I replied. I am happy. And I realized with a sense of both sadness and triumph that it was true. I had found happiness not in finally winning my family's approval or attention, but in freeing myself from the need for it, in building a life where I was valued for exactly who I was, without comparison or condition. It was a bittersweet realization. Bitter because it had required such a painful separation, sweet, because it had led to a freedom and self-acceptance I had never thought possible. The journey to healing after cutting ties with my family wasn't linear. There were steps forward and steps back, moments of clarity and moments of doubt. But through it all, I kept returning to one fundamental truth. I deserved to be valued, respected, and loved for who I was, not for how I measured up to my siblings or anyone else. In the 2 years following my Harvard graduation, I built a life that reflected this truth. My research at Boston University led to several published papers and a growing reputation in the field of molecular genetics. Dr. Hernandez became not just a mentor, but a true champion of my work, encouraging me to apply for a prestigious PhD program that would allow me to expand my research while continuing to work in his lab. "You have a unique mind, Penelope," he told me when I hesitated over the application, "the kind that comes along maybe once in a generation. I would be failing in my duty as a scientist if I didn't push you to develop it to its fullest potential." It was the kind of validation and encouragement I had craved from my parents, but had never received. Coming from someone I deeply respected, someone who understood the value of my work, it meant more than I could express. My relationship with Daniel deepened into something solid and nurturing. Unlike my family, he took genuine interest in my research, asking thoughtful questions and celebrating my achievements without reservation or comparison. When I was accepted into the PhD program, he organized a surprise celebration dinner with our friends, complete with a cake decorated with a microscope and the words "Dr. Penelope Johnson in progress." "I'm so proud of you," he said that night, raising a toast. "Not just for your academic achievements, which are extraordinary, but for your courage in creating a life that honors your true self." My chosen family had expanded beyond Alexis and Taylor to include a diverse group of friends and colleagues who accepted and valued me exactly as I was. We celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, and shared the kind of unconditional acceptance that I had never experienced in my biological family. As for my actual family, the path to reconciliation was complex and often painful. The coffee meeting with my mother had been a start, but it was just that, a beginning. We had spoken honestly about the past, about the patterns of favoritism and neglect that had led to my decision to cut ties. She had listened, really listened perhaps for the first time, and she had apologized not with excuses or justifications, but with a genuine acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. "I failed you as a mother," she had admitted, tears in her eyes. "I was so caught up in Stephanie's pageants and the glamour and excitement of it all that I forgot to see the quiet brilliance right in front of me. I forgot to celebrate the daughter who was changing the world in her own way." It wasn't an instant fix, of course. Years of feeling invisible couldn't be erased by one conversation, one apology, no matter how sincere. But it was a foundation upon which we could begin to build something new, something healthier. My father was a different story. He had resisted acknowledging any wrongdoing, insisting that he had always been fair and supportive. It wasn't until I shared with him the specific instances his absence had hurt me, the science fairs, the academic competitions, the Harvard acceptance, the graduation, that he began to see the pattern. "I always assumed you were fine," he said during our first meeting nearly 18 months after I had cut ties. "You were so independent, so self-sufficient. I thought you didn't need the kind of support Stephanie did." "Everyone needs support, Dad," I replied. "Everyone needs to know they matter. Being independent wasn't a choice. It was a survival strategy. I learned early on that I couldn't count on you or Mom to be there for me, so I figured out how to do things on my own." It was a difficult conversation filled with defensiveness and misunderstanding, but it was a start, a crack in the wall of denial that had separated us for so long. Stephanie's journey to understanding was perhaps the most surprising. The self-absorbed beauty queen I had grown up with had matured in unexpected ways. After winning several major pageants, she had begun using her platform to advocate for girls' education and STEM programs for young women. "You were my inspiration," she told me during a tentative lunch meeting. "I always admired your intelligence, your focus, your ability to pursue your goals regardless of what anyone thought. I just didn't know how to express it back then." She had even enrolled in college, pursuing a degree in communications with a minor in women's studies. It was a version of Stephanie I had never imagined possible. "I'm sorry for all the times my pageants took precedence over your achievements," she said. "I never realized how unfair it was, how it must have felt to always come second. I was just soaking up all the attention without thinking about what it meant for you." James, too, had evolved in his understanding. As the oldest, he had been somewhat removed from the dynamic between Stephanie and me, focused on his own path and his relationship with our father. But over time, through many conversations and much reflection, he came to see the pattern that had shaped our family. I took it for granted that Dad would be interested in my business ventures, that Mom would brag about my achievements. He admitted, "I never stopped to think about how different your experience was." He had become an unexpected ally in my efforts to establish healthier boundaries with our parents, often stepping in to redirect conversations when they began to veer toward the old patterns of dismissal or comparison. The process of reconciliation was slow and imperfect. There were still times when I felt the old hurt resurface, when a thoughtless comment or an overlooked achievement would trigger the familiar feeling of invisibility. But now I had tools to address it. I could name what was happening, set clear boundaries, and advocate for what I needed. And more importantly, I no longer measured my worth by my family's recognition. I had built a life rich with people who saw and valued me, who celebrated my achievements without qualification or comparison. My sense of self no longer depended on winning approval, that had always been conditional and limited. 2.5 years after cutting ties, I invited my family to attend a conference where I was presenting my latest research. It was a significant moment not just professionally, but personally. I was offering them the opportunity to see and acknowledge my work in a way they never had before. To my surprise and cautious joy, they all came. My mother, father, James, and even Stephanie sat in the audience as I presented my findings on a new approach to gene therapy. They listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions during the Q&A, and afterward congratulated me with genuine enthusiasm. "I didn't understand half of what you said," my father admitted with a rueful smile. "But I could see how respected you are in your field. The way the other scientists listened to you, asked your opinion. I'm proud of you, Penelope. Truly proud." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There were still wounds that might never fully heal, patterns that would require constant vigilance to avoid repeating. But it was a new beginning founded on mutual respect and understanding, rather than expectation and disappointment. As I stood with my biological family and my chosen family at the reception following the conference, I felt a sense of peace I had never expected to find. I had created a life that honored my true self, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. And in doing so, I had opened the possibility for my family to know and love the real me, not the invisible middle child, desperately seeking approval, but the confident, accomplished woman who no longer needed their validation to know her worth. The journey from that heartbroken Harvard graduate to the person I am today was not easy. It required courage to cut ties, wisdom, to establish boundaries, and compassion to allow for growth and change. It meant learning that love should not be conditional, that family is defined by actions rather than blood, and that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who cannot see your value. I don't know if my relationship with my family will ever be fully healed. The scars of childhood neglect run deep, and trust once broken is not easily rebuilt. But I do know that I am no longer defined by their perception of me. I am defined by my own choices, my own achievements, my own capacity for growth and connection. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to choose a different path, to create a life that reflects our true worth, rather than the limited value others have assigned to us. And sometimes that choice opens the door for those who once diminished us to finally see us in all our complexity and beauty. I stand now in a place I never thought possible, at peace with my past, engaged in work that fulfills me, surrounded by people who love me for exactly who I am, and open to a future that includes my family in a healthier, more authentic way. It is not the ending I would have written when I stood alone at my Harvard graduation, but it is infinitely more healing and hopeful than I could have imagined. What about you? Have you ever had to distance yourself from family to protect your self-worth? How did you navigate that journey? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, Your worth is not determined by others' ability to recognize it.